Somewhere in your garden right now, there are insects making decisions. Where to land, what to lay eggs on, which roots to attack next. And if your entire defense plan is a bottle from the garden center, you are already behind. What is the most effective pest control on this planet had been growing in ordinary gardens for centuries, and most people keep pulling it out, cutting it back, or never planting it at all. 7 plants, no chemicals, one strategy that completely rewires how your garden defends itself. Let's get into it. Stay with me through the full list. Plant number 7 is the one I need you to see. It has been used as a biological weapon against insects for over 2,000 years. It produces compounds so potent that multiple countries restricted its production in other industries entirely, and most Western gardeners have never considered growing it. If you're new here, hit subscribe. Every week on this channel, we go this deep. Now, let's build. Plant number 1, nasturtiums, Tropiolum majus. The first plant on this list looks like a garden decoration. It's actually a trap. Nasturtiums are one of the most misread plants in companion planting. Most gardeners treat them as a cheerful, edible afterthought. The flowers look nice, the leaves go in salads, fine. But experienced organic growers use nasturtiums with a very different intention. They use them as a deliberate sacrificial crop. And once you understand the mechanism, you'll never set up a brassica bed without them again. Here's what's happening. Nasturtiums are irresistible to specific aphid species, the cabbage aphid, the black bean aphid, more irresistible, in fact, than most vegetable crops. When you plant nasturtiums at the perimeter of a bed containing kale, cabbage, or broccoli, you're not just adding color, you're redirecting the pest pressure. The aphids flock to the nasturtiums instead of your food crops. They concentrate in one predictable location, and then you decide what happens next. Cut those stems and compost them away from the garden. Hit them with a targeted soap spray, or let predatory insects find them. Once aphids are concentrated in one spot, the ladybirds and hoverflies do the rest. This is called a sacrificial trap crop strategy. It's been used formally in organic agriculture for decades, and the farmers who figured it out didn't have a degree in entomology. They just noticed where the aphids went. The answer was always the nasturtiums. Practical use. Plant nasturtiums in dense clusters at the edges of your brassica beds, roughly 3 plants per 4 feet of bed edge. Check them weekly. When aphid populations get heavy on the nasturtiums, cut those stems and compost them away from the garden. The nasturtiums will regrow. Your cabbages won't need to. Plant number 2, lemongrass, Cymbopogon citrus. The second plant on this list has been intercropped with vegetables and fruit trees across Southeast Asia for over 300 years. Western gardeners mostly think of it as something you buy dried at the grocery store. That is a significant underestimation. Lemongrass produces a compound called citral, which makes up roughly 65% of its essential oil, alongside geraniol and myrcene. These compounds are so disruptive to insect sensory systems that they're used as active ingredients in commercial mosquito repellents. Not because scientists invented something similar, but because they isolated what was already in the plant. In the garden, citral released by living lemongrass has been shown to repel whiteflies, spider mites, and aphids, while simultaneously interfering with the reproductive cycles of several common pest species. A 2016 study published in the journal Industrial Crops and Products confirmed that lemongrass essential oil caused mortality in 90% of spider mites exposed to it under laboratory conditions. As a living plant, it releases these compounds continuously, all season long. That's 300 years of farmer knowledge confirmed by a peer-reviewed study. When traditional and scientific knowledge land on the exact same answer, that's worth paying attention to. Practical use. Plant lemongrass in clumps at garden borders, particularly near beds that struggle with whiteflies or spider mites. In cooler climates, grow it in containers you can move indoors before the first frost. Crush a few leaves periodically to increase volatile oil release near vulnerable plants. Harvest the stalks regularly. It keeps the plant vigorous and producing. Plant number 3, stinging nettle. Full stop. This one requires you to fight every instinct you have as a gardener. Most people find stinging nettle growing at the edge of their property and immediately try to get rid of it. Thick gloves, long sleeves, a lot of frustration. Completely understandable. But removing it is also one of the most consequential mistakes you can make if you're trying to build a garden that defends itself. Here's the part that surprises almost everyone. Stinging nettle doesn't repel aphids. It does something smarter. Nettle acts as what ecologists call a banker plant, a reservoir for beneficial insects. Specifically, it's a home base for aphid predators, ladybirds, hoverflies, parasitic wasps. These insects colonize nettle patches early in the season, building their populations on small colonies of nettle-specific aphids, aphids that don't touch your food crops. Then, as your vegetable beds mature and become more vulnerable, those predator populations disperse outward, already established, already hungry, already in numbers that matter. A 2019 study found that gardens with established nettle patches within 10 meters of vegetable beds had aphid predator populations up to 80% higher than gardens without nettles. That's not a marginal improvement. That's a transformed ecosystem. The cottage gardeners who let nettles grow at the fence line weren't being lazy. They were being strategic. They knew something we're only now quantifying. Practical use. Allow a small, contained patch of stinging nettle at the perimeter of your garden. Partial shade, moisture-retaining soil. Use a buried edging strip to control spread. Harvest the young tops in spring for a nutrient-dense tea or soup. Leave the rest to do its ecological work. Quick pause. If you're watching this and haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Every week on this channel, we go this deep into the real science and forgotten wisdom behind companion planting, pest management, and building a garden that actually works. Hit subscribe and tap the bell. 4 more plants. Plant number 4, basil, Ocimum basilicum. Basil is probably already in your kitchen. It belongs in your garden even more. And most people who grow it aren't growing it right. Most growers know basil pairs well with tomatoes. Few know why. What's happening isn't vague garden lore. It's chemical, active, and specific. Basil produces a volatile compound called estragol, also called methylchavicol, along with linalool and eugenol. These compounds are released continuously from the plant's leaves, with intensity increasing as temperatures rise through the day. Thrips, aphids, and tomato hornworm moths are acutely sensitive to them. These pests use smell to locate host plants. Basil essentially scrambles that signal. The plant is broadcasting interference on the exact frequency pests use to navigate. University of Florida trials showed that tomatoes grown with basil intercropped at a 1-to-1 ratio experience significantly fewer thrips infestations than tomatoes grown alone. And basil doesn't just repel, it attracts hoverflies, whose larvae are active aphid hunters. One plant repelling the pests that navigate by sense and simultaneously feeding the predators that eat what slips through. There's something almost elegant about a plant that earns its place twice, once in your kitchen and once in the biology of your garden's pest management. It's not decoration, it's infrastructure, practical use. Plant 1 basil for every 2 tomato plants, close enough that the leaves occasionally brush. Pinch basil flowers to keep the plant producing volatile oils at peak intensity. Use the harvested basil in the kitchen. This is pest control you can eat. Plant number 5, marigolds, Tagetes spp. 3 words, alpha-terthionyl. Most gardeners don't know what that compound is. The ones who do plant marigolds every single season without exception. Marigolds have been grown alongside food crops for so long it's nearly impossible to trace where the tradition started. Mexico, India, the Mediterranean. Gardeners across centuries and continents landed on the same plant for a reason. And it wasn't just because they're bright and beautiful, though they are. Here's what most people miss. They plant marigolds thinking it'll deter pests in a vague, general way. But the mechanism is far more specific than that. Marigolds produce alpha-terthionyl in their roots. When that compound enters the soil, it's toxic to soil-dwelling nematodes, specifically the kind that attack tomato roots, pepper roots, and cucumber roots. Underground. Above ground, the flower's sulfur-containing volatile oils confuse and repel whiteflies, aphids, and thrips. Above ground and below ground, two layers of protection running simultaneously from a single plant. Research from the University of Exeter found that French marigolds specifically reduced whitefly numbers on nearby tomatoes by up to 67% over a full growing season. That's not vague deterrence, that's measurable, documented protection. Practical use. Plant French marigolds, Tagetes patula, in dense rows at the border of any bed containing tomatoes, peppers, or cucumbers. Space them about 8 inches apart. For nematode control, plant a full season before your vulnerable crops and let the root compounds build up in the soil. The investment is small, the result compounds. Drop a comment before this video ends. Tell me which plant you're adding to your garden first. Nasturtiums, lemongrass, nettle. I read every one. Keep watching. The last two on this list are the ones most people have never considered. Plant number 6. Lavender. Lavandula angustifolia. Lavender has been cultivated over 2,500 years. The Romans carried it into every territory they occupied, not for decoration, but because they understood what it kept away. Fleas, moths, mosquitoes. They weren't working from a textbook, they were working from observation, passed generation to generation. Here's what gets consistently overlooked in modern gardening. Lavender doesn't just repel, it recruits. The linalool and linaloyl acetate in lavender are potent deterrents for fleas, moths, whiteflies, and mosquitoes. But lavender flowers simultaneously attract bees, lacewings, and parasitic wasps, the insects that actively hunt aphids, caterpillar eggs, and scale insects. Two functions at once, keeping specific pests out and building the population of insects that handle what gets through. Studies in commercial herb garden settings have shown measurably reduced aphid pressure on neighboring crops, primarily because of the increased predatory insect traffic that lavender draws in. One plant, two outcomes, zero spraying. There's something deeply satisfying about a garden that self-regulates. Lavender helps you build one. Practical use. Plant lavender at the corners and borders of raised beds or along pathways. It wants well-drained, slightly alkaline soil and full sun. Do not overwater it. Stressed lavender actually releases more volatile compounds. And keep dried lavender bundles inside your seed storage area to repel moths and weevils from stored seeds. Plant number 7. Wormwood. Artemisia absinthium. You may know it by reputation. It's the plant behind absinthe, the spirit that was banned across Europe and the United States in the early 20th century due to the psychoactive properties of one of its key compounds, thujone. What most people don't realize is that this same compound, alongside absinthium and artabsin, is one of the most potent insect-disrupting substances produced by any plant on Earth. Thujone is a monoterpene. It directly interferes with the nervous systems of soft-bodied insects and disrupts the neurological function of many flying pests. The volatile oils released by a living wormwood plant are strong enough that cabbage butterflies, aphids, flea beetles, carrot flies, slugs, and snails actively avoid planting zones near it. Medieval growers hung wormwood in granaries and wove it into stored clothing specifically to keep insects out. The Romans used it, the Egyptians used it. This is not a recent discovery. What makes wormwood different from every other plant on this list is the intensity of its effect. Most companion plants work by confusing pests or attracting predators. Wormwood works by making an entire area hostile. The scent alone is enough. Insects don't investigate it and leave, they reroute entirely. One important thing to know, wormwood is allelopathic. It inhibits the growth of nearby plants through the same root compounds that protect the soil, including some vegetables. Treat it as a perimeter plant exclusively, not an intercrop. It belongs at the borders, not inside your beds. Respect that boundary and it will work for you for years. Practical use. Plant wormwood along garden perimeters, particularly near beds that struggle with flea beetles, carrot flies, or slugs and snails. Keep at least 18 inches of clearance from vegetable crops. Dry the stems and hang them in seed storage or potting sheds to repel moths and weevils. In peak pest season, lay fresh cut wormwood branches around the base of vulnerable plants. Poor soil, full sun, minimal water. This plant asks for almost nothing. What it gives back is a perimeter that insects choose to avoid. Before the outro, if this level of depth is what you've been looking for in your plant education, the Complete Plant Care Handbook covers companion planting strategy, full seasonal plant care, and everything in between in one complete practical guide. Link is in the description. 7 plants. Centuries of proven use. A pest management strategy that was working long before anyone put it in a bottle. What ties all of them together is this. Nature already solved the pest problem. Before garden centers, before spray programs, before there was a product for every infestation, there were growers who paid close attention to their land, who noticed which plants the pests avoided, which plants drew in the insects that did the hunting for them, who passed that knowledge down season by season, generation by generation. The science didn't discover these plants, it confirmed what those growers already knew. The most powerful tools in your garden aren't the ones you buy, they're the ones you plant. If this gave you something real, a plant you're adding, a strategy you're rethinking, hit subscribe and leave a comment below. Tell me which one you're planting first. Are you going classical with the nasturtiums, going deep with the nettle, or are you planting wormwood and building the perimeter? Drop it below. See you next week.